Hello and welcome to another episode of Movie Thoughts. I'm Dominic Tardamella, and could it be another episode? Episode 3 in one day? Yes, it can, because the Movie Thoughts, they don't stop. You know, fellow film lovers, they don't stop. They just keep going. Doesn't necessarily have to be something I watched recently. It could be something random that just popped into my head. That's what this podcast is going to be. And that's why I'm jumping right into another episode. And we're bringing it back. All right? We're bringing it back this time. Not to the future, Marty. No, we're bringing it back to the past. Okay? We're bringing it to 1988. A significant year for me because it is the year of my birth. And it is also the year of some of my favorite movies. One of which came out, Beetlejuice. It's a notable one, okay? Another one that's notable is the movie I'm going to be talking about today, which is not Beetlejuice. I kind of just fucked with you. I kind of just fucking did a little, 180 on you. You're doing a 360 on me. What does he say in Last Action Hero? You know. If you know the line, just, All right? I'm going to say that. I'm forgetting the line. But if you've seen Last Action Hero, another great movie, not from 88, but another great movie. But no, today I'm going to be jumping into They Live. Even though I faked you out and made you think we were talking about Beetlejuice, I'm just going to talk a little bit about They Live. I'm going to talk about whatever comes to mind, honestly, because I love this fucking movie, and I am fresh out of watching it again for I don't know how many time, but not only did I just watch it, but I watched it in a theater in an Alamo Drafthouse, okay? And first of all, Alamo Drafthouse, a great theater. One just opened on Staten Island. I fucking love that place, but they just played They Live, the 1988 sci-fi classic by John Carpenter. Now, John Carpenter is probably my favorite director in the horror genre. Wes Craven's up there, obviously. George Romero's up there for me, but I think I'm going to have to go with overall, it's going to have to be John Carpenter because you look at the track record, right? First of all, Halloween, right up there with Dawn of the Dead, the original 78 one, as probably my two favorite classic horror films. But you look at the track record there, whether it's the Thing remake, whether it's Escape from New York, whether it's, sillier movies like Big Trouble in Little China, They Live, obviously. John Carpenter's filmography, his directing just speaks for itself. He's got some questionable ones in there. Not saying that I really hate any John Carpenter movie, but there are some questionable ones. Ghost of Mars, right? Escape from L.A. Although as the years go on, I think maybe I understand Escape from L.A. a little bit more. I understand kind of like what he was going for, but They Live. So I just recently saw this, literally out of the theater, and I actually took my nephew, who's, what is he now? Jesus, he's 12, and he liked it. I thought I'd blow his mind a little bit. I've been going to movies with him, especially now that he's getting a little older, and showing him stuff that's cool, stuff that he might like. And seeing an old movie was cool, it was cool. But, man, rewatching this movie, and especially on the big screen, really appreciating it in the way that it was supposed to be made, it was great. As far as the soundtrack, that John Carpenter score, that burn. And, where do you get started with Rowdy Roddy, the legend? If you're a wrestling fan, you know what you're in for with the hot rod. I grew up on wrestling, and just Rowdy Roddy was always one of my favorite wrestlers. Just such a personality, and just his antics, wearing the kilt and just running around and wreaking havoc. Always loved him. But if you're not a wrestling fan, this is something to appreciate. Rowdy Roddy Piper. I mean, just his acting. And listen, he's a very good actor. I think. I'm not going to say that Rowdy Roddy Piper was going to win any Oscars. Maybe if he had the right role, perhaps. I mean, worse people have won Oscars, right? But he's perfect in this movie. I mean, he's everything that you want in a movie like this. You also got Keith David, who, oh my God, Keith David. I mean, another one that's just a classic, classic iconic actor to me, and just their fist fight in this movie. I'm really just gonna, this isn't, like I said, this isn't from the very beginning. This isn't a review podcast. This is just movie thoughts. This is just me ranting, for my love of movies. And especially when I talk about a movie that I do love. Because this is really the first episode I'm delving into a movie I fucking love. And I know I love. Like if you're seeing a new movie and you're getting my thoughts on it, I'm going to maybe be a little bit all over the place because I don't maybe know how I feel about it overall. But this is a movie I've lived with. I've lived with for years. And as far as like, when was the first time I seen They Live? I remember exactly, actually. I first saw They Live, and this is going to bring up a whole nother conversation, but Joe Bob Briggs, if you're a fan of The Last Drive-In on Shudder, Joe Bob Briggs, right? He's been around forever, and he used to have a show on TNT when I was a kid, Monster Vision. And I believe I was at maybe like my cousin's house and whatever, I think there was other family members there, and I just kind of drifted off to the TV and stumbled across Monster Vision. Now I stumbled across, it was They Live. I stumbled across it, probably, it was in the beginning because I saw the good stuff, it had to be about 25 minutes in, 30 minutes in, right when the stuff gets going with the aliens and the sunglasses. And, just Joe Bob's, when they would go to Joe Bob and his thoughts on the movie. And I was instantly intrigued by this film. And I had a guess, if I had a guess. Jeez, I want to say I was maybe like 9 or 8. And I saw this. And horror movies to that point scared me. Anything monstrous, but like a kid, you get intrigued. And when I saw these images, the black and white, it was reminiscent of the Twilight Zone to me, which also at that point scared the shit out of me, which later on grew to become one of my favorite shows. I watch them constantly over and over again. Love the show. But seeing that, and I think I saw a little bit more of the movie, and then there was about maybe I saw 40 minutes of it in hindsight. I don't know what I saw, but then we left. We ended up leaving, and then I don't think I caught the end by the time I got home, or if I went to bed or what, but hooked. That was a movie that for years I didn't know the name. You gotta you gotta think back in the day for if your younger audience is listening, which I hope you are. We didn't have computers at that point. We couldn't just look it up on our phones and say, oh, was that movie? That's the beautiful thing about technology now, is like you will always know what movie you're watching, right? You could find out, you could figure it out. You got an actor that was like, oh shit, Rowdy Roddy Piper is in this. I knew Rowdy Roddy. That was like, because I was a wrestling fan. And I knew Rowdy Roddy, and I said, what the fuck is that movie? And I think it lived with me. I think I probably found out the title later on, but and then maybe I forgot it or something like that, because I remember being like in my early, I want to say maybe a few years later, I remember maybe talking to somebody at Blockbuster and asking them about it, and they knew what it was, which is the beautiful thing about when the video store existed. You could go in and you could talk to a movie geek and he would tell you, and he would train you in the ways, So, like, I remember talking to somebody in a video store and saying, hey, there's a movie, and there's aliens, and there's sunglasses, what's the name of it? And sure enough, They Live. But They Live is such a fun movie. Where do you, like I said, between the cast, John Carpenter's score, John Carpenter directing it, fun, such a fun, and, rings true, and now more than ever, now that I'm older, because I've watched it over the years, but now as an adult, seeing it, and listen, it's got its cheesy parts, it's obviously, there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff going on, it's a satire element to it, but really, like, there's something about this movie, especially now, in the climate, whether politically or just how we live nowadays with technology and phones and all that wild shit and people being addicted to Instagram, TikTok, fucking whatever the hell everybody does. You see, like, there's something, similar. It really, resonates with what goes on today. I mean, I could see, like, I couldn't help think about if They Live was made today, or, if there was another They Live, which I heard there could possibly be, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But, I couldn't help but think of, like, all that stuff being through phones, the billboards saying consume and, procreate, reproduce, marry and reproduce and all that stuff. Like, I couldn't help but imagine, like, nowadays this movie would have all that stuff coming through. You're watching a video of somebody doing a stupid dance on TikTok and it's telling you to, secret messages, hey, procreate. But yeah, this movie is still, like, really just, I don't know if I'd call it, I guess it is kind of like a cult movie at this point. I think the people that know about it know about it. It is obviously a little bit more mainstream as the years have gone on. Obviously, John Carpenter has reached that, like, master icon status nowadays. And I hope people have seen this movie. I mean, I know a lot have. There was some people in there that they seem like, it's a Friday night. I'm recording this, so I went on a Friday. And there was a nice amount of people that seemed like, they were maybe on a date and maybe they were checking out. Maybe they were showing it to somebody who had never seen it. I'm sure there was people like me who had seen it a million times in there. But shit, They Live. I mean, really just such a good movie. So fun. You have this character, and I don't even think, now that I notice it, I know his name is always Nada, but I don't even think they're even, like, call him by a name anywhere in this movie. Rowdy. I think it just goes on where they don't speak of his name. I could be wrong about that, but shit. The whole sunglass thing, it's creepy. I remember as a kid, like the alien makeup, that shit still holds up too. Obviously under black and white, the veil of black and white, it looks better. I don't know what the deal is with that from a production standpoint, if maybe that's why they did it like that in black and white. But obviously the color, the red and the blue, it's become a little more mainstream. They Live, where they have, pop figures and t-shirts and stuff like that of it. But yeah, such a fun movie. I mean, but the fight scene, I don't know if that is the longest running fight scene. I'm not going to look it up right now, but in a movie, but it's definitely one of the top ones. I mean, it's got to be as far as length goes. They're beating the shit out of each other, and you got to think, man, you got to listen, they do a hell of a job, the both of them. But every time I'm watching this movie, I always got to think about the fact that Roddy is a trained wrestler. This guy is used to this. But I got to give my props to my man Keith David, too. Because this guy is, I mean, I don't know Keith David's background, exactly. He could have had some fighting experience. Maybe he did. But that shit, they're doing that bare knuckle brawl shit, and it looks good. It doesn't look like, especially for a movie back then, because you got to remember, back, especially in the 80s, the way fight scenes were filmed sometimes, they were, and
it's like I said, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, this movie, but a lot of fight scenes from 80s and stuff like that tend to be a little bit cartoonish, or maybe, over-exaggerated, or maybe, and it is exaggerated in a good way, but, even like, movies like Rocky and stuff like that, sacrilege to even bash Rocky, any of them, I don't care, I love them, but, the fighting, especially when you watch a Rocky movie, and a newer boxing movie, obviously, the boxing is there's a little bit more, like, it's not as real, whereas, like, nowadays when you make a movie like that, you're trying to ground it in the realism, and I gotta say, like, that fight scene is as ridiculously long as it is and stuff like that. It's pretty grounded in reality, it's funny. There's a few moments where they're beating up each other, they're apologizing to each other, kicking each other in the nuts, funny shit. But yeah, man, this movie still holds up on such a fundamental level. Like, yes, like I said, like very, eerily similar, to the vibes we get today, with even like the conspiracy theories people believe and what. Not that I like to humor conspiracy theories. I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist, but I do like to dabble and, take everything with a grain of salt. But even that stuff, it's very, very evident that this movie could be made today, and there was talk a while ago. I don't know. John Carpenter was hinting that something may be coming a couple of years ago. I don't know if it was before COVID or in the process of COVID, but it was around that time. And I don't know if it would possibly be a sequel or some kind of remake. I know, Blumhouse obviously has a good relationship with Carpenter now with the 3 Halloween movies they've made. So who knows at that point? I wouldn't be against it. I think that They Live ends on a good note where it's like, it's a one and done kind of movie. You're not requiring a sequel. I don't think box office wise back in the day the movie made a lot of money to warrant a sequel anyway. I know John Carpenter's not really a fan of doing sequels of his movies, but if there was a good approach to it, I mean, I would take it. I would like the aliens to remain pretty much the same. Maybe a slight update, but definitely, prosthetics and, those kind of visual effects over like CGI aliens or something like that. I think that would be cool. I would wonder if they made that today or if they remade it, if they would use the black and white or they would do it in a different way. Like maybe like heightened color or something, because, maybe black and white would seem a little bit dated to some people. Personally, I like the black and white. I think, like I said before, it gives a lot of the Twilight Zone vibes. And this is kind of like a Twilight Zone-esque story if you break it down. It feels like a longer episode of like the Twilight Zone. So obviously, it's an action movie too. A lot of people get blown away in this movie. A lot of aliens get blown away. I mean, and I say that because I haven't watched it in a while, to be honest. And this was like sitting in a theater, especially like the Alamo, and you're not getting the distraction of the phone. So I was like not even, I was engaged completely, which you should be watching a movie like They Live. And I was like, shit, they fucking shoot a lot of aliens in this movie. Like because obviously the scene, I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum. That's the classic scene. That's the scene we think of, and obviously he shoots a lot of aliens then, but shit, like that latter half of the movie, that third act, when him and Keith David, they're blowing away everybody. A lot of people die too. I mean, like, it's violent. I was like, shit, I don't know if it's because I'm older now and it's because I'm sitting next to my 12-year-old nephew, and I'm not fucking bashing movie violence, because fuck that. I'm not even going to have that conversation. Movie violence is movie violence. Real violence is real violence. Let's not even put them in the same category. But I don't know if I was just so aware of it because I was sitting next to him, and he's getting to the point where he's seeing more and more movies. He hasn't really seen any like obviously like Tarantino movies or anything like that. I think I was watching that shit when I was younger, but when I was his age, but like I was more aware of it, because I was watching it kind of through his eyes as we were watching it too. Like, what would he be thinking? And I was like, shit, this is a lot of guns, a lot of shots going off. But yeah, this story still holds up. Definitely rings true. A fun movie. Just such a fun movie. I mean, if you haven't seen They Live, I hope I'm not spoiling it too much. I really don't even think it's something that could be spoiled, though. I mean, you just know the main idea. Another thing I realized watching it, like, after, not having watched it in a while, is like, they take their time getting to the alien shit. It's a solid, 20 minutes, right? Before he puts on those glasses, 20, 25 minutes. But it's earned. I mean, it's funny because it turns into a different movie, in a way, as that happens. You put on the glasses, and then it turns into, this fucking comic book, action, crazy, frantic, killing all the aliens. But those things are still creepy, too. I think that makeup still holds up, too. I think for a movie from 88, yet again, the black and white helps it. Obviously at the end when it flips the switch and, the satellite gets blown up and it's in color. But still holds up. Still like a creepy alien design. I liked it because it was kind of like, there's something about it that it works, but it also works on a cheesy level too. It does both. It creeps you out. There's something creepy about it, especially certain aliens that you see. I mean, obviously they all have the same look face-wise, but the hair and the clothes they're wearing, the human hair and the human clothes, there's something unsettling about some of those ones. I can't think of particular ones, but and the music when you first see the reveal, really strong, hit strong. Shit. I really love this fucking movie, though. I think that it's got to be a classic. I mean, it's got to be considered a classic, right? At this point, I mean, probably because it's a genre movie, it falls through the cracks. Some people may not appreciate it. Okay, so I'm just skimming around. Proposed remake on Wikipedia, saying that in 2010 there was development on a remake of the film with Carpenter in a producing role. Okay. 2011, Matt Reeves signed on to direct and write the screenplay. Wow, that's interesting. Matt Reeves of the Batman fame, most recently. Project also shifted away from being a remake of They Live to a re-adaptation of 8 O'Clock in the Morning, ditching the satirical and political elements. Since then, there have been no new announcements. That's odd. But I remember recently, hearing something. I don't think it was that far away. Like I said, it was around the COVID time that he kind of hinted. There probably is talk of some sorts, because this is a Universal picture, too. So, Blumhouse did the Halloween remake with Universal, so I would assume that they could work out something. I would like to see that, though. I think it could work. If Carpenter's involved, he's doing the music. I think he does the music with his son and his nephew or something. They have albums that they release of original music, like lost scores and stuff like that. That shit's good. I'll pop on some John Carpenter sometimes, Soothes the soul, creeps you out. If it's the right time of night, yeah, it could creep you out. But it definitely floods the mind with creative thoughts when you're listening to John Carpenter's synth, right? I mean, blasting through your house. Rowdy Roddy, though. I wish he would have got, he did some movies. I don't think that he didn't really get his due with film. I mean, I got to give it, as far as wrestlers go, especially back then, that making that transition from wrestling to film was much more difficult. I mean, the guys who did it, you know, it wasn't a long career. It never, you know, like the two notable ones would be, honestly, Rowdy Piper and Hulk Hogan. And I mean, the best thing that Hulk Hogan did in his acting career was obviously, like, pound for pound is going to be the beginning of Rocky 3, right? When he's Thunderlips in the flesh, baby. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, right, kids? But, you know, he did some fucking, you know, obviously he did No Holds Barred, which is a ridiculous movie. If you haven't seen No Holds Barred, just go find it. Whatever you got to pay to rent it or buy it, just do it. I'm not going to talk about it right now. That'll be another podcast, No Holds Barred. Because that movie, I could talk about that movie for a while. I mean, but Rowdy, he didn't really, I mean, I don't know who had the better career if I had to compare, because you got that in Rocky. You know, Rowdy, though, probably does have the better career just based on They Live. Because They Live is actually a good movie, and I don't think Hulk Hogan was actually in a good movie. I think he was in just a lot of garbage. What the hell's that movie am I thinking of? Mr. Nanny? Was that one? Yeah, that's the one. That's another movie. I don't know if I could. I mean, go watch that too. It's ridiculous. But yeah, it's not like nowadays, like The Rock. You know, The Rock is really he really broke out of the wrestling thing completely now. I mean, now everybody knows The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock as an actor. I don't agree with all his, you know, movie choices. I think a lot of times playing the same role, but he's a fucking charismatic son of a bitch. All right? He does, like, that guy, I liked The Rock as a wrestler when I was a kid, but, like, you get why this guy is who he is. I mean, obviously it's his work ethic too, but it's a different world now. It's a different world now. Maybe Roddy Piper, perhaps, excuse me, maybe Roddy Piper in a different scenario. Maybe if he was acting now, if, you know, he came up at a different time, maybe he would have been able to parlay it into a more serious career, because he's got a screen presence. I'll give him that. And especially even, like, you know, obviously he becomes, you know, very verbal later in the movie and They Live, but, you know, in the beginning he's pretty quiet, and he's got a presence just being quiet, you know, just being this silent character, this wanderer, you know, drifter going from place to place. He has a presence about him. And he's fucking jacked out of his mind. I mean, shit, the guy takes off his shirt. It's like, fuck, this guy's jacked. But yeah, They Live. I don't know what else to say about They Live. It's a classic. If you have not seen They Live, I don't know what you're doing. You gotta watch They Live. You gotta just pop the popcorn. Just if you haven't seen They Live, if you somehow stumbled across this and you're listening to this and you haven't seen They Live, don't even watch a trailer, honestly. Don't even, just go, pop some popcorn, sit back, and watch it. And if you fucking see it in theaters somehow, like I did, that's great too. I mean, there's something about that. There's something about, I don't know how everybody feels about, you know, theater watching, home watching, but there's something about being in a theater. And I listen, I love watching a movie on Blu-ray, and the quality is beautiful. Now they got 4K, and 4K is like crazy. And it's great, you know, relaxing on your couch, in your bed, watching a movie. But there's something about watching a movie in theaters. You know, obviously it's been said, the communal experience. But there's just something about you're so, you know, engulfed, you know, and engaged in that movie. You know, you're in it. You know, especially when you're in a good theater with good sound and a big screen and comfortable chairs. You're in it. You're you're observing that way in a movie that you don't when you're home. You know, and maybe it's because, you know, you don't have distractions, too. You're dedicated to that movie, but just something about it. It's just you in that movie. For me, movies is church. But they live. Love it. Just love it. You know, this just it. That's what I'm going to talk about. That's how the podcast goes, right? I think of They Live. I seen They Live. I watch They Live. I'm going to fucking rant about it. Because it's one of my favorites. And it still holds up. And John Carpenter is a fucking champion. But yeah, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. And if you have seen it, go watch it again. Because it's amazing. And that's probably the end of this podcast. I'm Dominic. And you can find me on Dom Solo Reels. That's Dom Solo, like Han Solo. Dom Solo Reels on TikTok. Dom Solo Reels on Instagram. Genuine Reels on Twitter. And you could subscribe and like the podcast if you're liking it. If not, whatever. Don't like it. Leave. Good. Whatever. No, I'm just kidding. But really, whatever. And I'll see you all soon.